Somewhere along the way, you stopped being gentle with yourself. You didn't mean to. It just happened quietly, as life piled up. You started speaking to yourself in ways you'd never speak to someone you love. Every mistake became a reason to doubt, every flaw a reason to hide. You told yourself you had to earn rest, earn care, earn love. And in trying to be enough for everyone else, you forgot what it felt like to be enough for you. It happens to so many of us. The slow drift away from our own hearts. But here's the truth. You were never meant to love yourself perfectly, only honestly. This is where it begins. Not with grand declarations or affirmations, but with a quiet decision to stop treating yourself like someone unworthy of kindness. You don't have to know how to love yourself yet. You just have to decide you're willing to try. Loving yourself again begins in the smallest, most ordinary ways. It's the moment you catch your reflection and choose not to criticize what you see. It's allowing yourself to rest without earning it, to eat without guilt, to breathe without apology. You start realizing how often you've confused self-care with self-punishment, how often you've called it discipline when it was really disconnection. But love isn't about fixing, it's about understanding. You don't need to turn yourself into a better version to deserve your own kindness. You just need to remember that the person you already are is worth caring for. It's okay if it feels strange at first. You've spent years being hard on yourself. Gentleness will feel unfamiliar, but keep choosing it, even when it doesn't feel natural yet, because every small act of softness is a way of saying, I'm coming back home. At first, your mind will resist the kindness. It will tell you that you're being lazy, or selfish, or weak. That's what happens when you've been surviving on self-criticism for too long. Silence feels wrong, peace feels suspicious. But healing isn't about silencing those voices overnight. It's about learning not to believe them anymore. You begin to see that your worth was never something to earn. It was something you forgot to see. And as you start giving yourself permission to rest, to say no, to feel, you realize how much strength gentleness requires. It's not easy to unlearn the habit of self-blame. It's not easy to choose compassion when your instinct is control. But each time you do, you loosen the grip of everything that kept you small. This is what love looks like in real life. Not grand, not perfect, just patient. And patience, quietly, becomes the foundation of peace. There's a moment in healing when you start noticing the way you talk to yourself. You catch the harsh words, the quiet sighs of disappointment, the way you shrink after every small mistake. And for the first time, instead of ignoring it, you pause. You ask yourself, would I say this to someone I love? Almost always, the answer is no. That's where the shift begins. Not in trying to be perfect, but in choosing to speak to yourself with the same kindness you offer others. You don't have to turn every thought into positivity. You just have to stop turning it into punishment. You're allowed to correct yourself without cruelty, to grow without shame. Because real love, the kind that lasts, doesn't demand perfection. It allows you to be human, and the more you practice that kind of love, the safer it starts to feel inside your own skin. Learning to love yourself again means learning to stay when things get uncomfortable. You don't run from your sadness or distract yourself from your fear. You sit with them, gently, like old friends who've been waiting to be heard. At first, it feels strange to face what you've avoided for so long. But that's what love is, not turning away when things get hard. You realize that all the parts of you that you've tried to hide, the anxious ones, the tired ones, the ones that still doubt, all of them have been waiting for your acceptance. They don't need to be fixed. They need to be understood. You don't heal by rejecting your pain. You heal by embracing the version of you that's been carrying it. That's how love grows. Not from trying to change yourself, but from finally allowing yourself to be seen. And slowly, you start to feel safe within yourself again. You begin to understand that self-love isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet and consistent. It's waking up and choosing not to abandon yourself when life gets heavy. It's forgiving yourself for not knowing better, for staying too long, for trying too hard. It's realizing that the person you were then did their best with what they knew. You stop expecting instant transformation and start honoring slow progress. Some days, loving yourself looks like doing something kind. Other days, it looks like simply surviving without self-blame. You stop chasing motivation and start building compassion instead. And even on the days when you can't feel love for yourself, you choose not to add hate to the mix. That's still love. The quiet kind that doesn't need to be seen to be real. You're not becoming someone new. You're remembering someone true. As you soften toward yourself, you begin to see the small ways love shows up. It's in the deep breath you take before reacting. It's in choosing to rest instead of pushing through exhaustion. It's in the quiet moment when you forgive yourself for the way you used to live, just to be accepted. Loving yourself again doesn't mean you'll always feel confident or certain. It means you stop measuring your worth by how productive, perfect, or loved you appear. You start understanding that being worthy was never something you had to prove. It's something you simply are. And when that truth settles in, your whole life begins to slow down. You stop rushing toward validation. You stop fighting your own reflection. You start living in a way that feels like breathing again. Steady, natural, free. Because self-love isn't a performance. It's a way of finally belonging to yourself. As you practice being gentle with yourself, you notice how differently the world begins to feel. The pressure to impress softens. The need to prove fades. You stop chasing validation because your worth no longer depends on anyone's approval. It's not arrogance, it's peace. You start to understand that loving yourself isn't about believing you're perfect. It's about knowing your worth, even when you're not. You stop rushing your healing, stop measuring your progress against others. You begin to enjoy your own company again. The quiet, the stillness, the space that used to feel lonely now feels like safety. Because when you treat yourself with care, you stop needing the world to do it for you. That's the moment love turns inward, quietly, softly, like sunlight finding its way through a window you forgot to open. You start realizing how long you've lived in survival mode, always trying to earn something that was never meant to be earned. Love, rest, worth, they were never rewards. They were your birthright. You see now how often you traded your peace for approval, how often you silenced your needs to keep the peace. And yet, you don't judge yourself for it anymore. You understand that you were simply doing what you thought you had to do to be loved. But now you know better. Love that requires you to shrink isn't love. So you begin to unlearn the idea that care has to come with conditions. You start loving yourself on the hard days, the unproductive ones, the ones where you don't feel radiant or inspired. Because real love doesn't wait for the best version of you. It stays for all of them. And in that staying, you finally feel something you haven't in a long time, safe within your own heart. You start treating yourself like someone worth staying for. You listen to your body when it's tired. Instead of forcing it to keep going, you honor your emotions instead of apologizing for them. You speak to yourself the way you would to a friend who's trying their best. And slowly, that kindness starts to feel natural again. You stop expecting your reflection to change before you decide to love it. You stop waiting for everything to make sense before you allow yourself peace. Self-love stops being a concept and becomes a quiet practice, built moment by moment, breath by breath. There's no finish line, no final version of you waiting at the end. There's just this, choosing to meet yourself every day with gentleness instead of judgment. And that, in itself, is the beginning of everything you thought love was supposed to be. You'll have days when self-love feels impossible, when your mind drags you back into old doubts, when you hear the echo of every harsh word you've ever believed about yourself. And on those days, the goal isn't to feel perfect. It's simply to stay with yourself through the noise, through the heaviness, through the part that says you're unworthy. Because leaving yourself in those moments is what kept you hurting for so long. Love isn't about always feeling good. It's about always returning to your breath, your body, your heart. It's whispering, I know this is hard, but I'm not abandoning you again. That's how you rebuild trust with yourself, not through promises of never falling, but through the commitment to always get back up with kindness instead of shame. That's how love becomes real. Not loud, not perfect, just steady. You begin to understand that self-love isn't found in big gestures. It's hidden in the quiet choices, the way you speak to yourself when no one's around, the way you forgive yourself for what you didn't know, the way you decide to start again even when yesterday felt heavy. Love grows in these small, ordinary moments that no one else will ever see. It's not about becoming the most confident version of yourself. It's about becoming the kindest. You start noticing that the more compassion you show yourself, the easier it becomes to show it to others. You stop demanding perfection from people because you've stopped demanding it from yourself. And in that shift, your whole world softens. You no longer crave love as a way to be saved. You simply share it because it's overflowing. That's what healing does. It turns the love you once chased into the love you now carry. Somewhere along the way, you realize that loving yourself isn't a destination. It's a relationship. There will be good days and difficult ones. Days you feel proud and days you feel lost. But unlike before, you don't leave yourself when things get hard. You stay. You sit with your discomfort instead of numbing it. You speak gently to your reflection instead of criticizing it. You stop waiting for external love to validate the internal one. Because now you know the love that lasts is a one that begins within. You don't have to prove your worth anymore. You live it. You make peace with the fact that you'll always be a work in progress. And you realize that being a work in progress doesn't mean you're unfinished. It means you're alive. And for the first time, being alive feels enough. You start noticing how life feels lighter when you stop expecting yourself to be flawless. The pressure to be endlessly improving fades into the background. You begin to understand that love doesn't grow from perfection. It grows from honesty. You can be proud of yourself and still have room to grow. You can be healing and still have hard days. That balance becomes your new peace. You stop seeing self-love as an end goal and start living it as a daily practice. Like breathing, like resting, like forgiving. You don't force yourself to feel worthy. You start acting like you are, even on the days when you can't fully believe it. And that small act of faith becomes the bridge between who you were and who you're becoming. Because love, especially the kind you give yourself, is built one gentle moment at a time. The deeper you go, the more you realize that self-love is about trust. Trusting that even when you stumble, you won't abandon yourself again. Trusting that your worth isn't erased by a single bad day, a single mistake, or a single heartbreak. It's knowing that the person you are, right now, imperfect and in progress, is still deserving of tenderness. You stop chasing approval because you no longer need to be chosen to believe you matter. You start showing up for yourself the way you wish others had shown up for you. And with each small act of loyalty towards your own heart, you build a love that doesn't fade, a love that doesn't depend on doing or achieving. It just is. And one day, you'll realize that you've become the person you were always waiting for. You begin to understand that love doesn't mean constant comfort. Sometimes it's accountability wrapped in compassion. It's looking at your own patterns and saying, I can do better, and I still deserve love while learning how. You no longer confuse growth with self-rejection. You realize that you can want to change while still honoring who you are in this moment. That's what makes self-love sustainable. It's rooted in honesty, not denial. You stop running from the parts of yourself that make you uncomfortable and start listening to them. They're not enemies. They're signals. Each insecurity, each fear, each old wound is simply a part of you asking to be understood. And when you meet those parts with empathy instead of avoidance, something shifts. You stop needing to be fixed because you finally start feeling whole. Not perfect, but whole. You begin to understand that healing isn't about fixing what's broken. It's about remembering what's still whole. You've spent years trying to prove your worth through effort, achievement, or someone else's approval. But now, you realize that your worth was never lost. It was only buried under all the noise. You stop chasing validation and start listening inward. You start trusting your intuition, the quiet voice that always knew the way home. You no longer need to perform strength. You can simply be strong, quietly, without explanation. The beauty of self-love is that it doesn't demand anything from you. It doesn't ask you to be more, only to be present. And in that presence, you finally find what you were searching for in everyone else: peace, acceptance, and the soft safety of your own heart. You begin to realize that self-love changes how you move through the world. You stop seeking permission to take up space. You stop apologizing for existing in your full truth. The more you accept yourself, the less you need to perform for approval. You no longer fear being misunderstood because you're no longer trying to prove your goodness. You're living it. And that quiet confidence begins to ripple through everything you do. You speak slower, listen deeper, breathe easier. You stop rushing toward happiness and start noticing the small, gentle joys that were always around you. Because loving yourself isn't just about how you treat you. It's about how you experience life. It's seeing yourself not as a problem to fix, but as a person to cherish. And from that place, love stops being something you chase. It becomes something you naturally create. You start to see that loving yourself doesn't separate you from others. It brings you closer. The more you understand your own heart, the more space you have for the hearts around you. You stop taking things so personally. Stop expecting others to fill the gaps you're already learning to fill. You no longer give love as a bargain. You give it as an overflow. Because when you treat yourself with care, you stop craving it as validation. You become softer, not because life got easier, but because you no longer fight every feeling that comes. You allow yourself to be fully human, messy, beautiful, incomplete, and that honesty becomes your strength. You begin to see that love isn't something to be earned. It's something to be remembered. It's always been here, waiting for you to return. Not to a perfect version of yourself, but to the one that finally feels like home. You start realizing that peace isn't found in avoiding pain. It's found in meeting yourself kindly through it. You no longer rush to fix every feeling or hide every flaw. You let your emotions unfold without labeling them as right or wrong. You stop chasing better and start building balance. You begin to see that growth doesn't come from constant effort. It comes from allowing space for mistakes, space for change, space for stillness. That's what self-love becomes. A rhythm, not a reward. You finally understand that the goal was never to become someone new. It was to stop running from who you've always been. And in that quiet acceptance, you find the freedom you were searching for all along. You start letting go of the need to compare your journey with anyone else's. You understand now that growth has no timeline, that peace isn't a race to be won. Everyone heals at their own rhythm, and yours is no less sacred. You stop scrolling through other people's milestones, thinking you're behind. You realize you're not late. You're living at the exact pace your heart needs. Comparison fades when compassion grows. You no longer measure your life by achievements or approval, but by the quiet moments you feel aligned. Moments when you choose rest over guilt, honesty over pretending, gentleness over perfection. That's progress, the kind that can't be seen, only felt. And with each day, you choose presence over pressure. You learn that peace isn't out there. It's being built inside you, one kind thought at a time. You start realizing that the moments you once called selfish are actually sacred. Saying no to what drains you, resting when your body asks you to, choosing quiet instead of chaos. These are not signs of weakness. They are signs of respect. For too long, you've measured your value by how much of yourself you give away. Now, you're learning that real love includes boundaries. It's not closing your heart, it's protecting your peace. And every time you choose yourself, the guilt fades a little more. You begin to see that caring for yourself doesn't mean you care less for others. It means you finally know how to love from fullness, not from depletion. That's the shift that changes everything. The moment love turns from survival into something steady, kind, and true, you begin to see that boundaries are not walls. They're doors you choose when and how to open. They don't push people away. They invite in only what aligns with your peace. You stop over-explaining your needs. Stop apologizing for having limits. You understand that protecting your energy isn't selfish. It's sacred. When you stop saying yes out of fear, your life fills with moments that truly matter. You learn that love isn't proven by sacrifice. It's shown through presence. And the more present you are with yourself, the more deeply you can connect with others. You stop mistaking exhaustion for devotion. You start realizing that you can be kind without being consumed, loving without losing yourself. That balance is where self-respect and self-love finally meet, not as opposites, but as equals. There's a peace that arrives when you no longer need to chase approval. You stop waiting for someone to notice your worth because you already feel it quietly within. You no longer shapeshift to be accepted, no longer silence yourself to stay loved. You start showing up as you are, unfiltered, honest, enough, and that honesty begins to attract what's meant for you. You realize the right people, the right places, the right moments will never ask you to shrink. They'll meet you where you are, just as you've learned to meet yourself. You begin to see that authenticity is the purest form of love, the kind that doesn't fade when you stop performing. You don't have to be more, do more, or prove more. You just have to be true. Because when you finally choose yourself, everything that's real chooses you back. You start to understand that self-love is not about never feeling pain. It's about not abandoning yourself when pain comes. It's standing by your own side when things fall apart, whispering, "I'm here," even when you don't have the answers. You stop seeing your emotions as problems to fix and start seeing them as signals to listen to. You stop asking, "What's wrong with me?" and start asking, "What do I need right now?" And that single question changes everything. It turns judgment into care, chaos into clarity. You begin to realize that the relationship you have with yourself sets the tone for every other one. When you treat yourself with respect, you naturally expect it. When you give yourself compassion, you stop settling for less. That's how love begins to reshape your world. From the inside out, you start to see how the love you give yourself spills into everything around you. Your patience deepens. Your relationships become softer, lighter. You stop reacting from fear and start responding from understanding. You no longer try to fix people the way you once tried to fix yourself. You just hold space for others, for life, for yourself. That's what healing does. It expands your capacity to love without control. You begin to see that love doesn't have to be earned, changed, or proven. It can simply exist, calm, steady, unforced. You no longer seek dramatic highs or chase validation to feel alive. Peace has become enough. And from that peace, your life starts to rebuild itself naturally. Not from effort, but from alignment. You start living with a softer kind of strength. You don't need to fight everything anymore. You've learned that not every battle deserves your energy. You protect your peace quietly by choosing silence over reaction, boundaries over burnout, truth over pretending. You stop explaining yourself to those committed to misunderstanding you. You stop proving your worth because now you know it's not something to prove. You begin to see that love, real love, doesn't take your energy. It returns it. It doesn't drain you. It grounds you. And as you live from that truth, you realize you no longer chase love in others because you carry it within. The loneliness you once feared has turned into solitude, a place where you meet yourself and feel whole. You're not searching anymore. You're simply being. You begin to understand that loving yourself is not a single act. It's a lifelong conversation. There will be seasons when it feels easy, and others when it feels distant. But you've learned that distance doesn't mean disappearance, even when you forget. The love you've built waits patiently for your return. You no longer chase constant happiness. You honor contentment. You stop measuring life by how much joy you feel and start noticing the quiet steadiness that holds you even when joy fades. You've stopped trying to escape yourself. Now, you find comfort in your own presence, in the silence, in the stillness, in simply being enough without doing more. And in that simplicity, you discover what love has always been. Not something you find, but something you remember. You look back at who you used to be and feel something you never expected. Tenderness, not shame, not regret, just quiet understanding. You see the version of yourself who tried so hard to be loved, who carried too much, who stayed when it hurt. And you finally forgive them. Because now you see that they were never broken. They were just learning. You stop wishing you could erase your past and start thanking it for shaping your heart. Every mistake, every loss, every tear has softened you in ways that make you more alive. You realize that loving yourself isn't about forgetting your scars. It's about honoring what they taught you. And as you do, something inside you settles. You're not chasing healing anymore. You've become it, quietly, fully, beautifully. Now you stand here, not fixed, not finished, but free. Free from the weight of proving, from the noise of doubt, from the habit of leaving yourself behind. You've learned that love isn't found in grand moments, but in the simple ones. Choosing kindness when no one's watching, forgiving yourself before anyone asks you to, trusting your own heart to lead the way. You're no longer waiting for someone to come save you, because you've already come back to yourself. And that's what self-love truly is. Not perfection, not constant confidence, but the quiet courage to keep showing up even when it's hard. You've remembered that you are worthy, not because of what you do, but because of who you are. And from this place of peace, everything you touch, everything you love, begins to bloom again, starting with you.